Welcome everybody from all around the world. This is Andamento level 5 for term 1, 2024, lesson 5. This is part 2 of landscape, and I'm coming to you from the beautiful Blue Mountains, which is Darug and Gundungurra land today. It is misty, rainy, and a little cool. And of course, I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging from this beautiful place. This place is very relevant actually in today's lesson because it's called the Blue Mountains. Blue, 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 blues everywhere. Why is it blue? Why are the Blue Mountains blue? Well, they're blue because there's a large domination of eucalypts here, which emit a gas into the atmosphere. And this gas, along with moisture and dust, etc., has these short rays which reflect a blue light. So the Blue Mountains are in fact blue, and it's not that the trees are blue or the hills are blue, it's just that the gases in the air and the atmosphere reflect a blue haze. And this is very relevant to today because we're looking a little bit at aerial or atmospheric perspective, not aerial like from above bird's eye, but aerial is it's a term used to describe perspective, particularly in landscape. Now, Tani, can you hear us? No, yes, maybe she's connecting her audio. Here she comes. Here's Elaine. Wonderful. This is exciting. I was thinking we wouldn't have anyone today, but we do. Tani, can you hear me? Yay! Excellent work, you. There you are. Okay, here comes Mary Lou. Here comes Elaine. So we're looking at a little bit of aerial perspective, linear perspective, and how that plays out in landscapes. We're going to start though by reviewing some still lives that have come in. So I have updates in still life from Nancy, from Mary Lou, from Lee. I think I have. Do I have any more still lives? Oh, Joe's. I have Joe's.
But it's not really very different though.
It does actually look quite different. I don't know why. Is it maybe a different light?
Well, as I think I said in the comments, it actually looks better than that. The problem with my camera on my phone is that it picks up everything and, of course, highlights all the bits that I don't want it to highlight. So when you actually look at it, you don't see the interstices anywhere near as much.
Right. I do believe you. And
or the fact that it's not cleaned properly.
Yeah, I would really like to see it in person, and I'd like to see all of them in person actually. So so we'll start by looking at some still lives that have come in. Then we're going to move on to looking at some perspective, aerial perspective, linear perspective, and some viewpoint things. Then I've got a PowerPoint of mosaic landscapes to show you, to sort of highlight how other artists have approached the same topic. And we'll look through those. Then I actually would like to do a little bit of a practical with you with some drawing, and I know just to step through drawing up a basic 1-point perspective landscape with some aerial perspective in it with pencils. So that would be at the end. So if you've got, we'll have a little break and you can rush around and grab some pencils if you have them, watercolors or something like that. Nothing huge. But I think it's good to, having seen all your drawings, I can see that you all really understand, and I think it'd be good to get some pen on paper or pencil on paper in the 2 hours. I've got some website problems at the moment. I haven't been able to upload any of my term 2 dates or classes. I haven't been able to activate my lesson 5 portal. So I am hoping that today I can fix that. It's Good Friday here, which means all my other jobs are not jumping up and down at me. So there'll be lots and lots of things up there. There's lots of things there already, but you can't see them for you to look at. So on aerial perspective, linear perspective, Roman wall painting, proto-Renaissance painting, romantic painting, landscape painting, etc., etc. So if you've got nothing to do this weekend, you can just sit down and go through all that. And I know that some of you are, I know Lane's having it, won't be with us next time. Will you be with us next time? It won't be live next time, but you'll be having a bit of a break, so you'll be able to.
Yeah, I'll be in the class. I just can't do any work for 6 weeks.
Right. Okay. So you'll be able to catch up on everything theoretical.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what we're doing. Any questions? Welcome, Nicolina. Good afternoon. Good evening to you. Okay. So let's go to some still lives. So we're going to, Nancy, you're going to be first. I'm just going to share the screen. So Nancy, tell us about your process, because you have in some ways modified, haven't you? You started with the Chris Canning Lotus, the Lotus vase, which was one of the key images I supplied originally of Chris Canning's still lives, and then you did some interesting mediation. You already sort of skipped to the mediation that we're doing in landscape. And mediation meaning you photocopied bits, you rearranged it, you collaged it, you worked the design differently, you changed the composition of the painting to the point where really I can see, I know that bowl is definitely the same bowl, but everything else is slightly different. So where are you up to? And I know you're doing some light fall off experiments here. And using an interesting glass, and you're thinking of changing it because you're working in relief here, I believe. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Okay, so I do have 2 relief pieces in there. I sculpted out the bowl with foam, and then I built the bottle in the back. So first I took a bottle that was on the right hand side of the painting and cut it out and moved it over, and then I kept looking at it and going, oh, I see all the highlights that I need to put in there and all the cuts that I need to make to convey the fact that it's a round bottom bottle. And I'm like, that's so hard. I've done that before. So I realized that if I made the bottle a cylinder, so I did a little cylinder on top and a little cylinder in the bottom. So I resculpted my relief of the bottle on the left-hand side, and I just started laying in some of my smalty and the colors that I wanted to use for that bottle. So I spent so much time on my lime and my lemon that which is what kind of put me behind. So I finally said,
is it this one here or this one here that you took? This one.
It's the one to the right. That's the one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And the other decision that I made is I realized by looking at my copies of the picture is that bowl that the fruit's in supposed to be transparent, and I'm deciding not to do transparent.
Yeah, do we just decide not to do that? Yeah.
Yes, I just decided not to. So so the third part is I was experimenting with the light fall off. And so what that is it's clear glass. There's some that's clear tumbled and the other is clear not tumbled. And so I mixed up some thin set and then just at a light orange, and then kept adding red and yellow to try to get a gradation from the upper right to the lower left. But when I put this in grayscale, it looks like everything is the same value, except for maybe you get a little more read with the clear glass rather than the
it looks the same, doesn't it?
Glass.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of not sure where I'm going to go there, but my next step is going to be working on my cylinder bottle and finishing my bowl and its shadow.
Could it be that you've just well, I can see some very minor value changes, but I can see a chromatic change.
That's true. There is some chromatic because I was working with liquid tints and I was just kind of squirting more red in and more yellow in. And so it wasn't easy to get the same hue at different values.
Yeah. So that's an interesting point. There is definitely a value shift between, say, this light salmony here color here and this deeper red here. There's certainly a value shift. But when we put it into grayscale, as you said, it's not as obvious. And what it's showing us is the power of the chromatic shift. So this is a lot grayer or softer in chroma than this. So that's why this is in color, it's coming forward, and this is receding, so it's working. So in a way, value is at play, but also chroma is at play all the time. And I think that's the hardest of the three, to be honest. And I think when you guys did level 3, we didn't actually do much on chroma, and now I do a lot on it. So once I get that up properly, that's something in the chromatic stuff that some of you might like to look at again. And because I don't think when you did it, I really focused on chroma at all, whereas now I do a lot, and I think it's the hardest one.
Okay.
Yeah, but great work, Nancy. Keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. Okay, next one, we've got Joe's next update. So this is a lot lighter. I've like the photograph. I'll just bring up the other photograph as well for you. You start talking, Joe.
Not a lot to tell really. The main thing that's different is that I did put a watercolor wash over the interstices around the bowl of lemons, basically that brown background, which was annoying me. It still annoys me, but it's not as obvious. And again, as I said before, in real life, the interstices are nowhere near as obvious. In fact, you can barely see those. Yeah, see, it's more like this, but again, toning down the interstices behind the bowl of lemons. Basically, it's the only change. Oh, and I mounted it on the piece of ply that it's going to be mounted on yesterday. And in answer to your question, I still haven't read all your comments on my homework yet. It's just a piece of trimming from Bunnings that husband has stained up and will be mitering and inserting.
Okay, so husband is framer.
Husband is framer, yes.
Okay, I couldn't work that out yet.
Yeah. So he was actually at work doing his real job, but I like to think of him as my not so professional framer. The main problem is finding profiles and trim and timber that actually works, basically, is the big difficulty with not using a professional one.
Yeah, oh well, I think it'll look beautiful, and I think it will be lovely for us to see it when it's framed. Just noticing the difference between the two images. And I was looking at the painting, and the painting is really
dark. Yeah.
So that's the painting there.
Yeah.
So in a way, that sort of the depth of it is quite, the moodiness of it is really quite lovely.
In real life, it looks more like that, and it will be hanging in a hall which is notoriously underlit, so that effect should be enhanced. The only problem is that the hall is fairly narrow and you can't get at a distance to see it, but it's a small piece, so that shouldn't be too much issue.
Okay. Yes, that looks great, Joe. Keep it up, and share a photo when it's framed with us.
Hopefully by
this is Mary Lou's progress, which is also beautiful. Now, I think, Mary Lou, you're starting to like it. Are you starting to like it? I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used, it was just the lemons and the bowl. I had kind of reworked them so many weeks there.
Yes, you have.
But I think they're okay now. I'm having fun with it. Yeah.
And I love the sort of painterly, textural foreground, the vase, the combination of stone and glass, the larger pieces and smaller pieces and shards in the way you've put color in the shadow. You've brought in the leaf now, which I was dying to see. So it's coming together. What's happening up the top here? So actually, I just want to ask you about your substrate. So this is what Verdiano has taught me to do, but can you tell us what you've done there? Is that Carabond and sand? Isolastic and sand?
That's thin set. I think I did. I don't know if I did. Hold on, let me look at it.
So when I
I
was with
think-
in
I
Chicago
think
with
maybe it
Verdiano,
was just, I have to look at it, see what it was. It's a piece of wood. And, yeah, it might have just been, sand with, weld bond. Like a coating of weld bond, and then, oh, it looks thicker than that.
yeah. So this is an interesting thing to just note for everybody.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I'll elaborate from what I know.
It's been a
but
while. I just
I'm
had it in the
making,
basement.
all right, so I'm sort of making it up. But from what I recall, Maestro Verdiano Mazzi always puts sand on his substrates first. So he starts with, whatever the board is, whether it's Airlight, which is the aluminium fiberglass honeycomb, or whether it's Weddy, or whether it's timber, or whether it's cement sheet. Then he puts down a whole layer of like a binder, which is like isoelastic, or as Mary Lou is saying, like a weld bond, which is a more water-based.
I think we called it a scratch coat,
Yeah.
You like a really thin layer, and then you throw sand on it when it's wet.
Yeah, so that's the difference, I think, because often we do scratch coats because mosaic, the thin set likes to go onto a rough surface, not a dead smooth surface. I have actually honestly had this happen I'll tell you, with my samples. They're just samples, right? They're not commissions, they're not for sale. And often they're just, on a piece of MDF and painted MDF, painted black. I stick my thin set on there and stick my tiles on there. And then that just goes on as a sample wall. I'm in my studio, I hear a crash, the whole mosaic just falls off. Straight off the board, because there's no tooth on the board. So the tooth is the texture. So often when you start, if you're using MDF, you're told to scratch or score the surface with a craft knife or a Stanley knife with a blade to get a nice rough surface. Weddy board or sort of Marmox board in itself is already rough, so it's not so bad, right? Because it has a texture on it already. Often we put a scratch coat on, which is a thin layer of thin set onto the board before you then put your other thin set on. But with my samples, I tend to just not worry too much about that. What Verdiano does extra is he uses, I believe at the time he was using ground up marble chips dust, the marble dust, which is sort of halfway to sand, I guess, or sand and marble dust mixed. The thin set, and then the isoelastic, and then sand, and then the mosaic thin set was then the thin set was then buttered onto the onto the board. So everything was very rough, and I couldn't actually believe how rough it was. So some of the marble chips were like 3 millimeters in depth. They were quite chunky. And then that was all within a sort of recessed aluminium frame, and then the mosaic would go into that. So interesting. So it was a nice reminder, Mary Lou, just to see what you did there. So thank you for sharing that, because you've just prompted that whole reflection on
I don't know
the
if you want
substrate.
if I can add to that, is I had a skull that I did, like a bull skull. So they're called longhorn bulls. And also it kind of like, I just used thin set directly on the bone. And after a couple years, they all fell off. Same thing. I didn't have something to grip it. So on the next one I did, and I can put that in the Padlet later if you want. I first put not weld bond, I used Max glue.
Yep.
I think it's called Max.
Mac,
And then
yep,
I painted on that, and then I put a chunky sand on that, and then I let that dry. And then I put my thin set on.
Yep.
Same theory, but I did it on my object, which was the skull. Because I knew it wouldn't stick. Thin set wouldn't just stick to that. But I think having the Max glue and the sand first should be good.
Yeah, that's good. That's all good reminders. Thank you, Mary Lou. Okay, so I'm moving on now to the last still life that's coming, which is Lee's, which I think is finished. Yay, Lee. Beautiful work. This is just really, like I could love Lee. So Lee, tell us how you're feeling about it.
I feel pretty good about it. Thank you. I'm glad it's done. It wasn't easy. But again, I tried to think about brush strokes, and then I tried to, for each the areas, running my tesserae in different directions to help distinguish table versus vase versus background versus bowl. So I tried to pay attention to that.
It's just beautiful. I just love it. I love it. I just think you've got the way you've used the colors throughout it, and thought through shadows. I just love the way, even the leaves just disappear into the background. Like here, they just disappear there, and the drops in chroma of the leaves as they fall back in shadow. The bottom of the bowl here, the transition across the rim from highlight here to shadow, the way that the persimmons are reflected. As you can see, Margaret Ollie has put 2 dabs of that orange on the vase there, so you've got that reflected there. The vertical, as you said, the way you've cut, so vertical, diagonal, and more painterly there. The painterly shapes in the persimmons. The reflection on the table here, which is here. Yeah, I just overall feel it's just really, really just resolved so beautifully. Is this one stuck on top?
No, it looks like it though, doesn't it? That was just an accident. No, it's not. Same level.
Yeah, I was wondering
Yeah,
whether you actually built
I
up
really
like
spent
glass on
time-
glass there, but
Yeah, I really spent time trying to study the photo of the painting and look at it again and again and again. So I trying to see those reflections, and I love this idea that you gave us of putting the little specks of color that are reflecting from an item throughout, or the opposite color. I love that idea. So I tried to do some of that too.
absolutely gorgeous. So comments from the class, Lee, Nancy.
It's really lovely, Lee, and I just think it's so very impressionistic with the vase, and you're right, those little pops of color on the vase for the persimmons to, show their reflection. I just think it's masterful. It's just really, really lovely. Well done.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think it looks a bit like it looks like a painting, and it's sort of, for me, reminds me of a bit like a Picasso, where all like there's a depth, but the planes are all on the same level. It's beautiful. I really enjoyed seeing it.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Chris.
I feel like
Tony?
it really draws you in.
Oh,
There's
Michelina.
such a softness to it. It makes me want to really investigate more. I think maybe because it's there's so much of a similar palette in there, but oh my gosh, when you get the outlines, yeah, it makes you kind of think and really draws you in. Such a beautiful piece.
Thank you, Michelina. Means a lot. I enjoyed it very much. Ready to move on to the landscape.
Tani?
The one thing with mosaic that always gets me, and to look at this, I can see how much skill is in it and how many beautiful colors, and the palette's great. But I'd really love to see this from a distance, because I think from a distance it would pull so much more together. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I agree with you. I like looking at it from a distance better. I do. Like when I see it on my phone and it's small, my eyes are really drawn to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think from a distance the colors blend more, and it looks a little more like a painting from afar.
Yep.
So I agree with you.
I think it's the case for all of the still lives, and as you've illustrated, Joe, it's really hard to get the right photo. And I know Andrina's as well, wherever that is. Let me just pull it back here. Andrina's also just gorgeous. The 2 photos she sent are quite different. even though they're exactly the same image. So again, it depends on the light, where the light is, what it picks up, what it flattens. So that one, the fruits look more dimensional, and then in this one, they look a little bit more washed out, but then other areas come together. So, I think it just goes to show that the real life experience of seeing the work will bring, the dimension of it together, and as you move around the work, the reflectivity and that changes. And then Carol, you're still working on your background, yeah?
Yes, I am, Caitlin. Yep.
Love to see it when it's ready. And with Chris's already done. How do you go with yours, Elaine? Any more?
Against what you wanted me to do, I had to finish that last fig. I couldn't help myself.
Okay.
So I finished the last fig, and I've just gotten started on the bowl. I haven't made a lot of progress.
All right. That's all right. It's still like
Yeah,
to
I
see
couldn't leave that last one just sitting there.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Because I think I was just saying, hurry up and get on with the rest of it. But okay, no, that's all right. That's all right. Well done, everyone. And Michelina, I'd love to see yours when you're ready. And then we've got everyone else online who's not joining us live as well, to send in. Okay. So close that share. Carol put in a question. Want to just address that to the class, because I think other people might also want that too.
Oh, yes, I was just wondering, you mentioned about doing quite a lot more on chroma in level 3. I just wondered if there might be an opportunity to have a bit of access to a lesson or so on that, just, specific.
Yeah, so what I can do is I could just, it's because it's not really a full lesson, it's more sprinkled through everything, as opposed to just one lesson. So some of you have just done level 3. So Joe, that was you, for example, and I can't remember if someone else just did level, maybe Chris.
I did too.
So for those of you who've done that, that's probably not necessary, but I'm happy to just add you at the moment, add you to level 3, and then you can go through it as you like. So because you've already done it, so the intention going forward is when I'm transitioning over to this new platform is that as things become available, if you've already completed the course, you will have access. There will be a small fee or something. I'm not sure exactly what, but like a $10 a month access fee or something like that, where you can access everything you've done. So you can then go back and sort of go into access the level, review the level 1, which is way, way, way better than when you guys did it. It's just gone up like that. So every time I do it, they increase in their content and their quality. So you can go back in and review things, redo things, get extra templates, get extra exercises, get extra guidance, PDFs, etc. But at the same time, I haven't got all that ready yet. So what I'll do for now is I can just add you to level 3, and then you can, if you've got time, you can go through it at your leisure. They're quite long lessons, Carol. They're 3.5 hours sometimes each.
Oh,
So
okay.
you can pick, sort of scoot through and find what you need to find and what might help you.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. So let's move on now, and we're just going to look at this next area. Okay. So this is a short investigation and discussion on perspective and viewpoint. Now, we often understand from our earlier life or art studies, we understand linear perspective. And linear perspective is essentially designed for representing man-made environments or structural environments. So if we look at a diagram of some one point linear perspective, so this is a diagram here of just a structure and then a cube on this side. So with our 1 point perspective, it assumes a couple of things. There's always things that are necessary for the elements that must be there. The first thing that must be there is the horizon line. There's always a horizon line in linear perspective. Now, sometimes that horizon line is high and our viewpoint is, which puts us in a low viewpoint. Sometimes the horizon line is low, which gives us a higher viewpoint. And on the horizon line, there is a vanishing point. And the vanishing point is the point of convergence for all lines that are in reality 90 degrees to the vertical. So the other principle to remember in linear perspective is that verticals are always vertical, always. The verticals stay vertical, and it is a way of representing something that is running at 90 degrees to that vertical. So we can see this is a building, there's the corner, this is running at 90 degrees, this is one of the walls, and then this one, we know that that's also at 90 degrees to this wall, but in the image, it's not drawn at 90 degrees, it's drawn vanishing to the vanishing point. So if in this tiny little example here, we just have one square that's facing us on a flat plane. This is flat, straight ahead of us, directly in front of our view. We can see two faces of the prism vanishing to the vanishing point. So this is the simplest version of linear perspective. So this is the same thing. This is one point perspective with different viewpoints. So this is we are taking a low viewpoint of this one here, which means we can see the underneath of it. We are taking a high viewpoint of this one here, which means we can see the top of it. This one here, we're pretty much straight on because we can't see a lot of the depth. So the lower or higher we are from the form, the more of the top or the bottom of it we see. So the lower we are, the more of the bottom we see. The higher we are, the more of the top we see. The more straight on we are, the less of the top or bottom we see. So you can see only a tiny bit here of the top, whereas a lot more here of the top. Then if we think about, well, what about if we're not looking? So what this is assuming is that we're looking at it straight on. But that's very unusual, and it's quite an unnatural state that you would be in. So what if we're looking at it from the corner? Again, this is more applicable to a built environment as opposed to a natural environment. So if we're looking at it from the corner, things start to change. Now, you can still see that we have a horizon line. And in the 1 point perspective, the vanishing point was in this case, the center of the horizon line, in this case, over here on the horizon line. There's one vanishing point. In this example, which is our 2 point example, we have two vanishing points, one on the right and one on the left. We note that all the verticals are still vertical. They don't start to wobble. And that's one thing when people are learning, the verticals start going, ooh, the verticals are still vertical. And we know that this is a 90-degree angle if we were looking at this as a physical object in front of us, but in the image, it is drawn like this, so that this right-hand side, the top and the bottom are vanishing to here. Over here, the top and the bottom are vanishing to here. If we put that in multiple places, so we're looking at the corner, the corner, the corner. And again, this is the different viewpoints that we have. So this is a low viewpoint, which is sometimes called a worm's eye view, but it's really a low viewpoint looking up. So again, we're looking up. The vertical is still vertical. We can see the underneath of the form. Street level or eye level, we're looking straight at it, which means we cannot see the top and we cannot see the bottom. And then a high viewpoint, which is sometimes called a bird's eye view, but really a bird's eye view is more, I consider a bird's eye view more directly from above, like an aerial top-down view, like from a plane, but some people call it a bird's eye view, which is, you know, you're looking, it's a high viewpoint looking down, so you can see the top of the form. So these things help us to get, you know, dimension, but really they are mainly used in structural or built environments because we don't really have a lot of right angles in nature. So we can see the 2-point perspective put into play in things like this, where we have, you know, canals, bridges, roads, buildings. Things are worked on right angles. We have prisms that are used to build the built environment. Now, when we go into the natural environment, that sort of approach doesn't really work so well to create distance. Now, sometimes it can be helpful because we might see things like a telegraph pole or again, they're coming from the built environment. Now, if we look at Elaine's, this is Elaine's choice here of her landscape. And when I was looking at it again, I was thinking, oh, this is quite good. So in a way, this is a combination of a natural and a man-made environment. The man-made environment is the road. So the natural environment is the forest of trees and the beautiful cliff face and waterfall at the back. You can see this incredible waterfall cascading down all the way down to here, which is directly above the heads of the children there. Notice that if this was to be a linear perspective, a horizon line would be probably about here, and the road would converge about there, and the tree line is also converging about there. So if we look at this diagram, we can imagine there's the tree line, there's the road, there's the cliff face behind. So in a way, you could say that there is 1-point perspective in this image, but really it's only there because there's a road through it. If there wasn't a straight road through it, would we have that view, or would the trees be growing in a different way? We're not sure. In the one on the left, we have some kind of linear perspective as well, in that here is the horizon line straight across here, and the vanishing point is directly in the center, and we can see the tree line vanishing to here. We can see the riverbank or canal bank vanishing to here, and we can even see the reflection or the shadow of the trees cast on the river, on the canal, also vanishing to there. But again, there's man-made intervention here. Who planted the trees in a straight line? Is it a natural river or a canal? So in some ways, we have there's a man-made, there's a human impact on the environment which gives us the linear perspective in a way. I haven't actually found anything that I can think of that is completely natural that has linear perspective in it. So then what do you do? What do you do? How do you convey perspective and depth in a natural environment without linear perspective? Well, we already know that things are going to get smaller. I mean, we can definitely apply the rules of perspective, that objects recede in scale as they get quite further away from us. So we can see here already the trees are bigger in the foreground and they're smaller in the background. As they go away, they're smaller. We can see more of the trunk here, less of the trunk there. Whether they were in a straight line or not, that would still apply. But what the other element that we have to consider is what's called aerial perspective, and that is where things start to move back in space in an atmospheric way because we're looking at atmosphere. So if I just show you a photograph, for example. So this is where I live, not right there. That's the $1 million view. I don't have that one. This is the Three Sisters in Katoomba. And my dad used to climb on those when you used to be able to rock climb on them. You now can't. It's all very, it's roped off, etc. And we're looking here at the valley below, and you can see the elements of the landscape. We can see in the foreground, the trees and shrubs are bigger. They're taking up we can see more details. As we move forward, they get smaller and smaller and smaller until we can't see them at all. It just looks like a textural pattern on the hills in the valleys. But the aerial perspective comes in, or the atmospheric perspective comes in with the impact of the haze. And that's what I started saying at the beginning of the lesson about the mountains being called the blue mountains, because clearly they do have a blueness to them, a blue tint to the haze, which is in relation to the gases. But it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon at all to see a blue haze as you move back in space. Other things to be aware of. Now, this is not a hard and fast rule, but generally speaking, as things move back in space, they become lighter in value. So if we think about where is the darkest point of this image, where is the darkest value, we would say probably here. This is quite dark too here, dark value here, but really dark here. Where is the lightest value? Well, probably in the sky, but if in the actual land, other than the reflections and on the Three Sisters, in the valley, it gets lighter as it moves back. Notice where the high chroma is. The highest chroma is in the foreground in most instances, not all instances. So we can see in the foreground here, the sort of verdant green shrubs, the mustard green, ochre green, we can see evergreens here. As it moves back, the chroma drops. So we're getting grayer, moving slightly to blue. That's because of the moisture in the gases, but generally it is certainly grayer as we're moving back in space. The other thing is we lose the clarity of it. So it's no longer sharp. Something that is sharp in the foreground is no longer sharp, obviously because of the distance, but even if it was big, so obviously it's a minuscule shrub over there, right? But even if it was a big thing, a big form, it still would lack clarity and it reduces its sharpness. Okay, so the three things then are a shift in value, a shift in chroma, and a shift in clarity as you move back. Now, it is not always the same. It depends on where the light is, what time of day it is. Okay, so if I look, say here, we've got our high chroma in the middle, and we've got high value over here. So there's a higher value here and here than here. Now that is to do with the cloud cover and the way the sun is coming through the clouds. But we do have a drop in chroma as we move into the far distance. We can see a haze, whether it's clouds or smoke, we don't know, or mist. We have a reduction in chroma and we have a shift in value, and we have a shift in clarity. So we can see that the tree line through the middle there, even this one, is not as clear. So the further we go, the higher the chroma is, the higher the contrast, the deeper the values or more contrast in the values, the less contrast in the values, lower chroma and less clarity. Now we have this one here, which is actually Nancy's, and I was trying to apply the rule to Nancy's, but I couldn't because it's I suppose in some ways it's a different environment, and there does look like there's a red haze or is it sunset or smoke? I'm not sure what it is behind there, Nancy. It has a brown haze. Can you enlighten us?
It's sunset, so that's why you're getting those shadows. And I also have to say that I manipulated the picture a little to try to bring out the contrasting colors. So there's a little bit of that too.
Okay, so there's a little bit of editing. And then if I look at Joe's, so this is Joe's landscape that she's looking at. And again, when I look at that background, there's not a lot of drop in chroma there. But at the same time, it isn't that far away as well, because the viewpoint, we're not that high above the landscape. So if we were even higher above the landscape and we could see even further past this ridgeline, it might be interesting to then see if there was a drop in chroma and it as it goes back and a tendency towards grey. But at the moment, I was looking to see if this was a lower chroma, but it actually isn't. So in a way, we can't say it's always this or it's always that, because it very much depends on your viewpoint, where you're positioning the viewer and the viewer's experience, the time of day. Is it sunset? Is it sunrise? Is what's in the air? Is it a smoky day, a cloudy day, a sunny day, etc. But there are some principles that we can abide by. Now, a couple of other things to show you in how this has been communicated in art. So firstly, I'd like to just go back to Roman classical art. Love it, love it. Right. So as usual, Western art traditions, sort of Renaissance forward, they just think they've invented everything. I mean, our whole principle of Renaissance is the rebirth. It's the renaissance of classical techniques. And we see in the Renaissance, like the Brunelleschi and the invention of perspective and incredible technology in perspective that Brunelleschi really documented. However, it's not invented there. It was definitely used earlier. Definitely used earlier. So this is a Roman wall painting, 50 to 40 BC. It's an example in the second style. So in the portal, which you haven't been able to look at, I have put up some more information on the different styles of wall painting. The second style. So the first style of wall painting is creating fake stone. So basically, let's make our room, which has got a plaster wall, look like it's got marble on it. So they would paint marble patterns and terrazzo patterns and, gorgeous stone patterns. So with the first style, there was the idea of actually creating the effect of stone marble cladding. The second style was designed to create an illusion. So this is my favorite style, where we see the illusion of depth, or like a trompe l'oeil, but it's not really, but where you can see a room beyond. It places you in an environment. It puts you in a certain viewpoint. It allows the viewer to experience what it may be like to be in this room. So this is a cubiculum, which is a bedroom, pretty fancy. Certainly don't have that on my walls. And we can see that the perspective, there's an attempt at linear perspective. It isn't spot on, but it's pretty good. Considering this is 50 to 40 BC, it is not 1300 AD. So look at the line of the converging lines. So we have this balcony up here converging at the statue. We have another one converging here. But if this would be the line of convergence, then these would also converge there too. So then we've got these ones are converging here. These are converging here. This is converging here, converging here. This one's converging down here. So there's a number of vanishing points that are within the scene that don't all quite add up, but are no doubt brilliant. Now, that's linear perspective, but also there is aerial or atmospheric perspective here in 50 to 40 BC. Look at it. What is in the foreground is clearer. There's more clarity. It's crisper. The contrast is higher. The values are deeper. Step back. So this is all high contrast, high clarity, deeper value. This is the middle ground here. Even this is lower, is softer, grayer, less chroma, less clarity. And we go back again to this. Look, it's hardly there. They've just nailed it totally already. And then Renee goes, oh no, we invented this. No, they didn't. Right. So then this is what we see in a number of these Roman style wall paintings. And I know this is not a landscape, but this I think arguably is. So I claim relevance to this unit of work. So This is one of the 2 garden rooms, and I put this in the portal for last year lesson, so hopefully you've seen this one. This is from the House of the Golden Bracelet. Now, if you know the modernist painter Rousseau, I think Rousseau was influenced by this because this looks exactly like a Rousseau painting. And again, we can see aerial perspective. Look at that. What is in the foreground? What is closest to us? High contrast, high clarity, more contrast in value. As we move back in the space, we can see this lovely drop in chroma, and we can see a lightening in value, and also a reduction in clarity. So we can't see we can see the individual leaves at the top here, but we can't see them. They're not described properly. They're just like a silhouette. They're not described properly like they are here, for example. So more contrast, more clarity, lighter value, lower chroma, lower clarity. This one here is the garden room of the Villa of Livia. Now, this was an underground dining room. So they had it all good when they had the weather, right? So they had these triclinium as the dining room, and it was semi-submerged underground. There were no windows. So they're trying to survive the incredible heat of summer, and they have a dining room, and they want to make it feel like it's a beautiful experience in the landscape. So fresco all the way around, and this is 30 to 20 BC, and we can see, again, evidence of aerial perspective. So we have this, this is almost like the first style here, where you've got this kind of textural faux marble kind of effect. Then you've got the foreground with the trees, with the fruits, with the birds. We can see chroma, we can see color, and we can see that it's a peach or an apple. We can see the leaves, we can see the birds. It drops back in space, it gets grayer and less clear. It drops in clarity, drops in a light, goes lighter in value, and drops in chroma. And then this one, I'm just going to show you, is a video that I took personally last year of this room. I try not to make you seasick. Here we go. And just, it goes all the way around. Look at the perspective on the fence. So imagine this, you're sitting there, BC, having a nice glass of something, eating some figs and some olives, and looking at, and of course, you know, the colors would have probably faded slightly. This was again buried, so then the frescoes have been preserved. Look at the detail in it. I mean, it's ridiculous. So we can see this use of aerial perspective in landscapes this early, right? A couple of others. Okay, so that's enough of the Roman wall painting. I should just teach a course of Roman wall painting, really. Okay, other landscape painting. So this is Alfred Sisley. We can see again, this. So some of you in your own landscapes have said you didn't like the branches in the foreground, and I love that because it puts the viewer in, it places the viewer directly in the space. And I'm going to show you one in a minute by Frederick McCubbin, where we can see that too. So with this right here in the foreground, it places us very close and it puts us on the ground here. And then as we see in the background, we can see the reduction in chroma, the lightening in value, and the reduction in clarity of the background fields. This one here, so this is a Renaissance period, sort of slightly higher Renaissance, I suppose. And again, we can see definitive objects in the foreground, contrasting chroma, quite a lot of detail. As it moves back, we get that blue haze, and we see lower chroma, higher value, less clarity. William Mallord Turner, one of the most amazing romantic painters, and I've put information up about him, which you'll get to, which shows you this idea of the atmosphere. And he was really, he and the other romantic painters were really focused on the sublime, so just the beauty and power of nature over over man. And often we see in the romantic paintings that the human element is dwarfed and almost overcome by the power of nature or God in the environment. We can see this in Turner's work with the steam train. We can also see this in Eugene Bongerard's Mount Kosciuszko, which is an Australian place, Australian mountain. And we can see here, we can see there's linear perspective, we can see aerial perspective or atmospheric perspective. We can see the very high definition and high amount of detail in the foreground. We can see a reduction in chroma as we move back. We can see a reduction in clarity. We can see a lightening or a graying in value, middle value. We can also see the little people here, 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 and here. So these are climbers who have been depicted, have climbed up to this point in Mount Kosciuszko, and they are dwarfed. So this gives us a sense, the idea of this is to give you a sense of scale. So the viewpoint is fairly high. We are high above the environment, which gives us sort of an elevated feeling. There's a vastness to the landscape. There's a almost a a sublime beauty to it. There is no doubt that the environment is in charge here. It's just the world. The power of that environment is very, very evident. And now I just wanted to show you two more, then we'll move on from this. This one here, this is Frederick McCubbin. It's an Australian Impressionist painter. And I picked this one because it's quite similar to the forest image that I know Chris is doing, Carol's doing, a couple of others are doing as well. So it's really interesting because this forest image that I've chosen, I chose it as well because it reminds me of the Blue Gum Forest in the Blue Mountains where Chris and I live. And the Blue Gum Forest is a really special place. But this is not the Blue Gum Forest. This is in Western Australia. But this reminds me a lot of that too because it's very immersive. You are in the bush. There is no question. Here, you are standing on top of the mountain looking out over the environment, expansive. Here, it is intimate. It is close. It is private. The title of this is actually Lost. I don't know why I don't have the title on here. The title is Lost. And there's a feeling of you're some sort of voyeur. Like, what are you doing there? Why can you see her? It places you in the bush with her, and it creates some kind of experience for you as a viewer. Also, there's very little sky. The composition is cropped, so we're not seeing, like in this one, we're not seeing the sky. It's shut off, cut off at the top. So we are down low. We're lower in the environment. We have these sticks that are in front of us. It's almost like to climb through there. If you've been in Australian bush, you understand exactly how this feels. It's like, how am I going to get through that? There's all this spiky stuff, not to mention snakes and prickles to try and get over there because there's all this spindly. And if we have a look at this in grayscale, look at it. It's pretty much one value, the entire thing. So there's almost this sort of atmosphere of that, the bush, the color of the leaves, it's really confusing and immersive, and the girl is lost within it. So there's composition at play, there's volume at play, there's atmospheric perspective at play, and there's a feeling of that, the viewpoint having impact on the viewer and the viewer's experience of it at play as well. Okay, that's it for that. I'm stopping there. Questions? There was a question in the chat. Sorry, I really can't look at the messages when I'm talking because I lose my train of thought. I'll try and address that when we get back from our break. Yes, Tani.
What amazes me is that right from day one, there seems to be a need for human beings to create and to beautify their existence. And it's only become clear to me through this. 50 BC, even if you go back to the Egyptians hundreds of BC beforehand, they always wanted to make things look more beautiful. It amazes me. It's something that you've just given me through this talking.
Well, I'm glad. And it's also this idea of place, I think. There's an idea of humans' place in the environment and wanting to sort of put ourselves in it, and or create the feeling of being in the environment, or to remind ourselves about our environment, or to remind ourselves about place of where we live, what's outside, or what we would like sometimes. Like sometimes the environment, like in that garden room underneath, there's no windows, it's horrible, right? But then be made to feel like it was something. And in the second style paintings of in the bedroom, the feeling of that might create for you. And having just come back from not just Herculaneum, I think it was May last year, it's only a year, and a Pontus, and walking through those rooms, the sense of, I mean, the homes, the villas were incredibly large anyway, but the extra level of space that it provided the audience, or the person, the resident, that the implied space that was there, in addition to the architecture, incredible. So let's have a break. When we come back, we're going to look at mosaics. So we've looked at other forms of art, frescoes, paintings, but obviously we're mosaicists. So then how has this been done? I've got a range of people looking in mosaics. So take 5 minutes. It might be a good idea to just grab some pencils and bits and pieces, because I would like to do a little sketchy thing with you at the end, if that's possible for you. All right. 5 minutes, let's come back. Hello.
Hello, I'm back.
Okay. You're going back to Rome, Chris?
Yeah, we had
Awesome.
an Italy and Greece trip planned, booked 2 years ago, long before I came back into. So obviously we were in Rome last year, but part of the trip includes Rome, but a bit ironically, it includes Pompeii, and in Greece we go to Santorini, and I hadn't realized. So we're bypassing what's sort of expected, which is probably the main tourist thing, and we've booked a driver to take us to,
Akrotiri.
yeah,
Oh,
because it was a bit impossible not to. I just said to Ulrika, we can't do the sort of tourist thing. There's a couple of places I think that you get off the ship and sort of go to, and it was like we have to go to Akrotiri, so we've got to drive. So we are going to Akrotiri.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm pleased. I've never been there. So we're relying on you to. When are you going?
We're away all of May, so we leave Australia on the 2nd of May. So we're away for
Okay.
about 2 weeks.
So
I will
let's
take
have
photos.
some Padlet pics. I want
Yeah.
Akrotiri. I want new photos of the Palazzo Massimo in Rome, the garden room of Livia. Okay, we want Pompeii, a lot.
I'll
Okay.
do my best.
Excellent. All right, that's very fun. So I saw some chat questions. Carol, you were asking regarding the moving away from pure color. And in answer to that, Carol, that really is to do, well, it's the combination of, it's really chroma. So if you recall the Munsell wheel, which the Munsell color system, which is the one I tend to work with, we've got our hue circle, which is our the 40 hues around the circle, which is not the painter's wheel. It's the perceived color versus a mixed color. Our painter's wheel, and then so we have our hue circle. Then through the middle of the hue circle is our value column, white to black, and then running from that value column, which is like the trunk of the tree out, each branch is a hue, and the branch of the tree is where we would see the chromatic scale. So if we're talking about a blue color that is high chroma, it's at the end of the branch, it's a very blue. As we come closer into the trunk, it becomes less blue. It's still the same hue. And then if we could have a lighter blue if we move up in value, or a darker blue as we move down in value. So I think really what you're talking about is mainly chroma, I think, in your question. Tertiary, the color is more to do with the relationships of the color on the hue circle, not so much the intensity of the color. However, when you do mix across the wheel, you do get a reduction in chroma as well. So it's complicated. I don't know if I've answered your question correctly, Carol.
No, that's fine. I do. It's a mind-bending exercise, and sometimes I think, oh, yeah, I got it clear in my brain, and other times I think, well, maybe I'm all over the shop. But yeah, no, it helps a lot just to revisit it, and I will go back and look at my notes and things on the Munsell scale, actually.
Yep. It's good to keep learning that. So let's now go through this, maybe 15 minutes or 20 minutes on this. So I've just picked out mosaicists who work with landscape. And okay, we can't go past Solly. John Solinger is incredible. He's just off the charts. And he has this incredibly tricky technique where he doesn't really stick anything down until the end, and he lays it all out, and I just think it's a nightmare for anyone with cats or dogs. But you can see here this work, Snowfell, and stained glass. He's a stained glass artist, and we're looking through. We're positioned again. It's the viewpoint. Where is the viewer? We are in the forest. So we are right there in front of the trees, looking through the snowy branches to the landscape beyond. So we can't quite see the landscape beyond because we are obscured from our view by the trees in the foreground, and of course the heavy snow that's falling on the close branches. So we can see sort of these bigger chunks of pieces of snow that have landed. And then if you have a little look at the value as well, and again, the blue's in today, and the way that the values are shifting. Now, in this example, our rule doesn't really apply because in some ways the deeper values are at the back. See how I said, like, as soon as you get a rule and try and apply it, you can't. It's a principle you can often apply, but it doesn't always work. But we have this idea where we've got, our darker values are in the background. And of course, because it's snowy, so it's highly reflective in terms of it's a high contrast. And then there's these lovely gradations in value in this blue-gray. So you've got the bright, high value whites, the deep, low value dark bluey blacks, and then a whole range through the middle in scale of tesserae, in placement. Anyone want to make a comment about this or make an observation?
Are you serious? He doesn't stick anything down till the end.
Well, in the workshop he did here, that's the method, but I don't know if that's just a different. Has anyone else done a workshop with him?
No, I have not, but I'm wondering, do you think he used a glass over a photo for this? It looks very like a photograph to me.
Yes, I think he does. Christine Stickley did the workshop with him, who's a Blue Mountains lady. And she, had to lay it all out in this sort of tray thing and then invert it. I just could all go terribly wrong. Anyway, I don't know.
I actually did take a workshop with him, and that not gluing it down, it's maddening. Even in a workshop without my cat there was
So
maddening.
that's actually true? He does that?
Yes. That's what the workshop was, his whole technique. But I don't know if you can tell in this one, the thing that I like about his is the amount of layering that he does. Helps make so many of his, they look real. They look like photographs themselves.
So this has dimension.
Yeah, he only does that first layer where he puts all the pieces down and then glues, and then he adds the layers on top.
And how does he get it to glue? Elaine, what's the method?
You lay him down. You lay him down, and then by squishing it, you flip it over, and then he glues. He lays a layer of glue. Yeah, he lays a layer of glue on the actual piece of glass or whatever your substrate is, and then lays that down, and then flips it back. Yeah, it was maddening.
Okay, that's how I remember it from Christine telling me, and she was
And it was
stressed
fun,
out of her
and
brain about it.
I will never do a piece like that again.
But yeah, it's still incredible technique. Now this is another, look at this one. I mean, really. And we can see here the aerial perspective happening with the graying and the reduction, the lightening of value, the removal of chroma, the removal of clarity, the higher chroma is here, the strong color, high contrast, larger scale, less clear, grayer. I've still got beautiful purples and things through there, but it's interesting to, once you start seeing it, and I suppose that's what I'm trying to do in this course, is make you see it. And it's not always the same rule. It's not always exact, but as soon as you start to go, oh, right, that's what they're doing, you look at it and you go, yeah, I got it. This one I love. Sharon Loetke, I think that's how you say her name. I've just got to move my window. It's moved a bit. So she's using a mixed media, ceramic, glazed ceramic, recycled china, Opus Romano. There's a lot to see in this. There's a lot to see. What looks like corrugated iron, but I think it's actually tile, the back of tile. I'm not exactly sure. There's parts of dishes, rims. So objectively, again, we're right up close to it. And there's no, the trees going top to bottom. We can't see the top. We're right down close. The front, the foreground is big, strong, colourful. Then the midground here, this is where the passage of light is coming through with the chromatic change into the greens. And then the background, we do see lightening in value, reducing in chroma as it moves onto that horizon line there. One of the things I think is really cool is how the interstices, I think these interstices almost look like thin branches. Can you see that? So she's made cuts in the tile. So if I just pull that up, super clever. So here, these little interstices, like cuts in the tile, are representing fine twigs. So very clever, I think. And a good example as well of mixed media in terms of the use of, there's maker's marks in there, there's cups, plates, that kind of thing. Anyone want to make a comment about this? Observations? Obviously, I'm not going to see everything, so you guys are very, very switched on.
How big is it?
I don't know.
Because there's plates in there. It looks like it must be big.
I'll just.
There could be saucers, which are not quite so big, little chunks of saucer.
It could be saucers, yep. Any other comments?
I want to touch it.
You want to touch it?
Yeah, there's so many mosaics that just have that tactile. It just looks amazing. I just want to feel all the bits that are in there. It's just there's no place not to look and see something different.
I think it's got to, I just noticed something like the tiles look all hand cut. And then there's the green ones that are like machine cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, they seem like they don't belong there.
Yeah, I'm not super in love with the Opus Romanos.
What was that?
But then again, she's kind of boldly getting away with it in a way. So I've got another one of hers here I'll bring up for you. I've got a couple here, so I'll just bring that up now.
What was Opus Romano?
It's a type of tile. Well, it's just a brand
of tile.
A tile, yeah. We generally use it for kids. No, I generally use it for the kids' mosaics because it's nice and bright and it's like pretty safe and things like that. So I've just pulled another one of hers over here. This is from her site. I'll put the site up so you can go. So she's done that again. So she's got some full tile, but then overall that lovely bluish, icy blue. Lee, this reminds me a little bit of your idea. Not quite, but somewhat. This one I think is really also very nice. It's quite a low viewpoint, so we're down low on the path. The path is winding around. You can almost see the path winding here and then winding back again and winding back again in the distance. So there's sort of a linear perspective, I suppose, in that's reducing. We can see the foreground, these lovely big shoots of twigs or grasses or whatever they are. Then the branches really tangled and overlaid. Again, we can see the reduction in chroma in the background field, a lightening in value, and less detail. Mixed media as well. She's a good one to look at. I'll put the link up for you to check.
She's actually a Canadian artist, Caitlin, and
do you know her?
I don't know her personally. She's from Manitoba, I believe, like, so a few provinces over, but her work's been in our like national exhibitions a couple of times. I love the way that she does a lot of landscapes, and she actually does a lot of rug hooking, like textural stuff as well. But it's also like aerial landscape sort of perspective, but in rug hooking. It's really lovely. But I like how she uses sort of, I think it's the edge or the bottoms of those plates in so much of her work to stand in front. I don't see it here, but yeah, the lower left of that image. I just think she's got a real gift for utilizing those strange parts of broken crockery, and her use of shadows in these as well. In almost all of her landscapes, there are these forest scenes or snow scenes with a lot of shadow work in it, which I think is, like doubling the amount of trees you're doing, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're all blue. Blue shadows on the snow.
Yeah.
I
love her work.
It's just lovely. Now, totally different. Kate Kerrigan, landscape artist. Well, not always landscape. Mosaicist from the USA. Works primarily in gold, smolty, and marble. Very much in the lower kind of chroma, so monochromatic or low chroma, achroma or low chroma. So, and again, there's a real sense in here of linear perspective, because we've got the path and then the horizon line, which is here, and this idea of this vanishing point as well coming down. There's a beautiful sense of illumination happening through here as well. High contrast in terms of the use of the silhouette. And we can almost see that with Sharon's work in some places, but really with Kate's, we can see the silhouette of the trees as a very, very strong feature. This one here is more of a bird's eye view, looking down on the street below. Again, the silhouetted tree is quite a signature for her. A low chroma palette, meaning there's not a lot of colour. There's colour in the stone, and there's lovely circumactum in the paving, grey in the shadows, and the brown of the stone there, but not a lot of other colour. But we can see an aerial view. We're looking down on the street below as if she's looking from a window. This is another one of hers, again, with linear perspective, with the horizon line and the vanishing point in the center here. And again, the signature of her work, which is the monochrome or achromatic palette, and the use of the silhouetted tree, quite classic Andamento. Lovely use of value to describe the scene. Again, I guess it's a man-made scene in the fact that it's a path through a park. So you've got the structures that have been measured and laid. So that gives you the idea of the linear perspective, but I guess the selection of the viewpoint, the horizon line, the vanishing point, the light, the time of day is all the artistry. Now I've just got 3 completely different ones. They're all from my studio. So this is Galia. This is 2019, 17. Galia Menon.
She's amazing.
She is amazing. You should see what she's been doing lately. You won't believe it. Actually, it will blow your mind. So this is Galia Menon. She's in my advanced class, and she's really, really into making work about music and the environment. So she's a bit like Kandinsky. She listens to music, and then the music where composers have written music about landforms, whether it's Kakadu or whether it's Antarctica or whether it's actually she's just doing one at the moment on the Northern Lights, and she's looked at a piece of music about the Northern Lights, and then she's responding to the music in the mosaic. It's amazing. Anyway, she uses mainly minerals and Dal de Vere. She uses very non-traditional media. She does not use traditional Andamento ever. So this is an iceberg mosaic that she's looking at. It's actually relief, so it's quite sculptural, and it's a representation of an iceberg that's moving and being crushed, and then looking at the layers in the iceberg, and then it's on a rendered background, so it's relief. Lovely sense of texture. There's not really any sense of depth or perspective in a way in implied, but it's a more abstract interpretation of the landscape. This one is a different abstract interpretation of the landscape. This is an aerial view from the sky looking down. This is Vicky Bush. She lives down the road in the Blue Mountains. So this is the valley in her back garden. So from her property, they go down to a creek. And this is about, again, a sense of place and trying to sort of document sites and places that are important to us. So Vicky used a map of the area, and then this is the creek lines that flow down through the mountains to the creek below, and then the coils are ceramic coils with a glaze, celadon glaze over a terracotta, high-fired terracotta clay that I fired for her when I used to have my kiln. And then around that is a travertine. So again, an aerial view, it's simplified, it's abstracted, semi-abstracted. Next one is Pip. She's in my advanced class 2. And then this is a couple of years ago. This was 3 panels of the looking at the bush and the regeneration after the fire, but it's a mixed media work. So it's textural, it's quite deep. There's wire, there's smolty, there's bark, there's wood, there's twigs, there's rusty nails, and looking at passages, like very close up passages, essentially like a tree trunk, or looking through a forest or looking through a landscape, but with elements of fire or journey in the growth of the environment. This one I purchased. So I own this beautiful piece. This is in the studio, and this is by Desley. She's from New South Wales, and it's called Loss is Ragged, and it's about fire again, but it's again, it's sort of a narrative work. So this is, I wanted to show you this because, and I think, Chris, what I was getting at in your drawing was how I loved the fact that you had the first image you put up of your drawing was like focused drawing, and then it faded out. And it reminded me a lot of this work where there's a transition or a narrative happening, where on the left-hand side, we have the forest mosaiced in stone and glass, where the trees are clearly viewed, and there's a sense of perspective there, foreground, middle ground, background. Then we transition into a bushfire scene where we've got sort of fire and smoke and a high chroma palette. And then we transition out we have twigs remaining, we have sort of ashen grey, the chroma reduces, we lose colour, we lose more colour, we lose more colour, we lose more colour. Now we lose everything. So now we have an erosion in the substrate. We have perforations in the substrate. We have an achromatic palette over here, meaning no chroma. It's just, well, there is, it's kind of shell colour, but very low chroma. We have an absence of tesserae. We have a presence of negative space. We have presence of negative space in the substrate and negative space on the substrate. The interstices are broadened. The Andamento is fractured. It's broken down. So we compare this side of the work to this side of the work, you can see that there's a deliberate narrative or story that's changing throughout. So this is not something that we've dealt with yet in this class, because we're really dealing at the moment. What I'm trying to get you to do is take a photograph, mediate it, make changes to it, interpret it, and then mosaic it in your way. Whereas this is something a step further, where there's a story that's changing throughout the actual work. So there's a compression, there's a shift, like in Galia's, there's a symbolic shift between the two sides of the piece. Same with this one, there's a narrative or a symbolism in the panels and the transition between the story, or the evolution of the story as you move through the work. And then the last one is one of mine from 2016. This is a series of 7. They're about 1 meter tall, the big ones, and they're landscape representations. But it's called Doorways to Landscape because where my studio is, it's a National Trust property, and there's a lot of old paint scrapings on the doors that they remove the paint to look at layers that were there before. So they're revealing the colours that the previous residents painted the building. It's the oldest collection of colonial buildings in the mountains. And then I felt that looking at these panels of colour, they were like looking at landscapes, or like looking at a window at the landscape where I live. So I wanted to convey this idea of, you know, darker, deeper bush up to greenery, up to sky, and cliffs above too. So then there's this, they're in sort of little sets. This is the first set. And if you have a look at the laying, that approach that I took was very textural. So the Andamento is quite contemporary in that there is stoppiamento and there's flow. It's a very vertical flow, but it's broken up quite a lot with shards. And this is also a reflection of what I saw in paint. So it's the paint was the reference, the inspiration, but then I took a story which was regarding the environment, and then I made an interpretation. So I've got Litovi, Smolty, etc. in there. Then this one, I use a lot of large scale stone as well. So there's slate, mookaite, basalt in there. So you can see the idea of the rocks, the undergrowth, the moist undergrowth, the treetops, the sky coming through. And I don't know why there's brown at the top. Who knows? So yeah, that's some ideas for you. So I wanted to just take you through a bit of a visual journey there, from an artist who are using mixed media to artists who are representing, like John Solinger, highly representational of a photograph, beautiful use of atmospheric perspective, color and value. Artists who are using mixed media, like Sharon from Canada with plates, etc. Artists that are using like monochromatic palettes, like Kate Kerrigan, very little chroma, different viewpoints. Artists that are working in a more abstract way, removing the realism. So where Kate's work is highly representational, something like Galia's work is non-representational. Then artists like Desley, where she's trying to tell a narrative about the environment in the landscape, in the substrate, and in the transition across the form. Artists like Vicky with an aerial viewpoint of the landscape, telling a story around place. Pip's work, mixed media, telling a story across the transition of 3 panels. Who else's work was there? My work with the textural interpretation of what was paint then became a landscape. So you look at it and you're like, I don't even know what it is. Is it a landscape? It's got ambiguity to it. So I hope that that's just given you a little bit of inspiration about different approaches to landscape in mosaic. Comments, questions? Then we should draw. Nothing. Come on, give me something.
Very helpful. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot, actually. So many different perspectives and methods and materials. You can do anything.
I think I'm struck, Caitlin, by, and as I'm trying to process how I'm gonna create mine, um, it seems that with landscape, maybe more of a lack of andamento is efficient in it. I mean, when I look at John's work, and it's all just such random sizes and shapes put together, but it works so beautifully for a landscape.
Well, there's certainly no reason why, I mean, using classical andamento is a skill or a technique, but it doesn't always have to be used.
Like when I think of, Kate's feel, of course, the monochromatic tone is there, but there's something about the regimented tesserae that feels like colder or more static to me than using a lot of various sizes and shapes that I saw in other work for a landscape.
Well, I think what you're saying there also is it's the mood of it. So it depends on what the landscape, what it is, and also what you want to say. So Kate has a very kind of austere, it's like a minimalist, pared back. It's really pared back. It's actually very hard, and it's very clever, very hard. It's very distilled, right? You go to someone like Sharon's, it's not distilled at all. It's like, right? They're both valid and beautiful. Just they have a different outcome in the impact on the viewer and the viewer experience. So what you need to do, which is harder, easier said than done, is work out what you want to say about your landscape. Now, I know we're just doing a sample. It's a small thing, and this is a huge topic, right? You could spend a year on it. You could do a degree on it. But what I'm trying to impress upon you in these 3 short lessons is the diversity and the way that the things we're learning are part of a language that we manipulate to communicate. So whether you go andamento or you go no andamento, it is going to say something different. Whether you go high chroma or low chroma, like Kate's low chroma, or like high chroma, it's going to say something different. Whether you go mixed media, texture, relief, like Galia's, or whether you go, really one material, so something different. So every choice you make, composition, perspective in terms of linear aerial, high viewpoint, low viewpoint, central viewpoint, scale, use of color, use of chroma, use of texture, use of reflectivity, what materials you pick. All of these things are coming together. And that's the hard part for the artist, you all are, is distilling that into something that fits for you. And I guess we're doing a sample. Some of you are doing a sample. I provided an image. I provided, some of you have chosen your own image. But then going on from here, I mean, this is just one little task in your whole mosaic life, right? It's 3 lessons. How would you then take that knowledge and then put it in place somewhere about saying something you want to say about a place or a time or an environment? And it's quite a powerful tool that you have. Like, as artists, you have this really powerful gift, all of you different, right, to communicate something, whether it's a still life or a landscape or whatever it is. And I suppose as we learn, it's just overwhelming because there's so many completely myriad of ways of expression and too many things to think about. And sometimes it might be worth just shutting everything out, stop listening to me for a while, rabbiting on, and just sort of go in and distill what you want. And I know a couple of you completed that questionnaire. Carol, I got yours. I know, Nancy, you completed yours. Some of you may have completed yours. But that doesn't really address the concepts you're talking about, but it does address your mosaic goals. And, you know, a further to that could be more of an investigation about the stories you want to tell or the concepts you want to investigate. And sometimes as emerging artists, you're like, I don't know, I don't want to do a concept. I just want to make art. I don't want to do that. I just like it or I don't like it. I don't want to tell big concepts. But the thing is, the concepts don't actually have to be profound. They can be simple yet profound. I mean, even those still lives you've made, they're profound. They're beautiful. There's just a moment that you've captured in time, even if it is interpretation of painting. You've done it totally in your own way. There's an energy that you've created in that moment of that still life thing that you've made. And that is something. There's a story there. So in the landscape you're doing, when I'm asking you to think about mixed media, etc., I want you to think really more about it. Don't just like get a whole lot of stuff and go, yeah, there we go. Think about it, try different things. And then also think about what's next for you as well. I'm really on my soapbox this morning, aren't I?
It's nice.
Okay, let's do some drawing.
Good question.
I think that
It was inspiring, Caitlin. I liked it.
Yeah.
I think that some artists have a higher skill level. Like you, was to me obvious that your skill was much higher than, I mean, maybe the John Solinger, I don't know, I wasn't as impressed with him as I was with your work.
Oh,
Because I think, I don't know, I kind of look at Andamento and I look at that where he was just kind of putting things down and maybe copying a photo. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Well, we all have different skills, you know. Like I think about some of the things that you guys do, and I'm like, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. So it's different. We've got different, and that I never want us to be cookie cutter. Like that is the last thing I want in my students, is to produce things that all look the same. So even in every task we do, I mean, I guess in the first 3 levels, everything looks the same. Everyone does a lemon and everyone does a sphere. But once we get past that, we learn the skills. We don't want this cookie cutter thing. We want to see, you know, things that you've done, Mary Lou. I look at some things you've done. That great thing at Rachel Sager's in the ruins. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Like all of you have done amazing things that I could never do. But the thing is, that's not what I want to do. And you don't want to do what I want to do, and that's good. It's good.
What did you say about Rachel Sager?
Didn't you do that beautiful bird?
Yeah, I did the bird, yeah.
It's stunning. Stunning bird at the ruins. So everyone, and Michelina, your beautiful tree relief that was in the Canadian exhibition, and all the things that you've done, and I know all of your work differently, but everyone's doing their own thing, and that's what we want. So yes, there's skill level, and yes, maybe I have certain skills, but I've been doing this since I was like 20 and I'm only 50. So, and people have also come to mosaics at different times, maybe later in life, but you've also don't ignore all the other life you've led before, because it's all experience and relevant in some way, and it can help inform you in your practice. So never feel like you're not, you know, up to it, because you all are. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. All right, let's do some drawing. Grab a pencil.
I can't move.
Oh, okay. Well, you can give instructions then. You can tell me what to do. So what we're going to do together is a very basic landscape, just to give us a bit of a practice on how we might put together a little study. I'm not drawing from a photo. I'm not drawing anything I can see. I'm making it up. What I'm going to do is just draw a small rectangle on my page. You can do whatever size you like. I'm going to do like a, say, 7 inches or 18 centimeters by, say, 14 centimeters. All right, so I've just given myself a small area to work in. And my camera's not straight, which is why my square doesn't look straight, which drives me mad. All right, from here, I'm going to think about just some 1 point perspective for the first. So the first thing we're going to put on is a horizon line. So I might put it in the top, on the top third. So if I was sort of to divide this in 3, 1, 2, 3, roughly to go on that top third there. So say that's going to be my horizon line. And on the horizon line, I'm going to do a vanishing point. So I could make it can be centered or it could be off centered, probably more interesting if it's off center, I think. So I'm going to put a dot there, which is my vanishing point. And then I'm going to put some lines of convergence in. So normally with a 1 point perspective, I'd need to put something that was vanishing, but I'm going to think about maybe a line of trees, for example. So I'm just going to draw a vanishing point from, I'm going to say from about here to here. I'm going to do some lines of convergence, which might help me as I go through the drawing. Okay, so that's sort of my framework of where I'm going to start with it. I might think about a bit of a triangulation in my composition. So I might add in some other diagonals. See what I can create that might look to vanish around about there. Okay, so from here I want to put in some idea of layers in the landscape. And one of the ways to do that is thinking about like a mountain ranges, things in the background. I might try and do something along this line here. So I'm putting a mountain range in here that might come down maybe to there. And then I might stack some other mountains behind that, maybe there, maybe here. Again, I'm making it up. You can do it however you like. So from there, I might think, all right, well, what's this going to be? I don't want a road. So I think, okay, what about a river or something? So I might take the river. This is maybe a headland or something. I might take the river behind there as if it's vanishing and get a bit of a river coming through here. So I'm not creating a straight object, but what I'm doing is responding to that vanishing point. It's if the river might vanish around the corner there. So whilst it is not a straight line, it's giving me a bit of a idea there. Tiny, I'm just going to mute you because all I can hear is rustling paper. She's been in the chocolate already. Nah. Oh, look. Oh, I was looking at that. So Tani's got the interior from the art class that we did online. I was looking at that this morning, actually. I think Carol did that class too. Maybe you did it too, Chris. Okay, So here's my river vanishing, and now I might put in some trees. So I might have a foreground tree that is maybe here, maybe big. I'm just drawing a bit of a tree thing here. And then my trees might also work along the riverbank. So there's my tree line. I'm going to do some trees that are also, in a way, vanishing towards the vanishing point. So the trees would get smaller and they would actually get closer. I do get criticised for not quite committing to any one line. Where it says, well, which line is it, Caitlin? Like, well, one of them. So thinking about this convergence again, this sort of 1 point perspective here, it helps me to think about, well, that's sort of the way that the trees might reduce as they go back in space. So even though that we're not a built environment, the trees might kind of move along the riverbank. They would, if they're all the same height, if they're this height at the front of the image, as they move back in space, they're going to converge or reduce in height in a similar way that these other lines do towards that vanishing point. Does that make sense to everybody? I mean, I know some of you already know exactly what I'm doing, and you're like probably drawing something amazing there. But for those of you who have less experience, is this making sense?
It makes sense, but I can't do it.
Yes, you can, Joe. I saw your sketch.
Yeah, no, I actually traced the outlines of that to get the proportions right. I mean, I could do that because it's in front of me with an eraser and redo it. It was just quicker to trace. But I can do what's in front of me. It's the creating bit from thin air that is not me. And I basically do colour by numbers.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
There's not, but I'd like to be able to work otherwise or be more creative or work more abstractly, if that's a word. But it doesn't happen. And when I try it, they're the pieces that I really don't like of my work.
Right. Yeah, you have a highly realistic sensibility.
Oh, yeah. Did I mention I was a scientist? Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So you, in that exercise in level 3 when we were doing the after images, do you remember that? And the vibrating boundaries?
Yes.
We were having a discussion yesterday in level 3 because we were trying to work out why we always saw the left one. And I was thinking it might have been a right brain, left brain thing. And then if you're a scientist, you might be more right brain, I don't know.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't have said so because in actual fact, I'm a creator, I'm a writer, I'm a researcher. So I'm certainly not your standard maths nerd. That is not my thing. I married one of those, so I don't have to do calculations. He can deal with that for me. But what I am is very definitely a researcher, and I think probably have developed a fairly good attention to detail, especially with my research. Not that I use it to actually generate an income. It's all history and family history and that sort of stuff these days. But the research side of it is still
there. Yeah.
Still there. And
it's an inquiring mind.
Yes, exactly.
Fantastic. Well, here we are. I've drawn some kind of tree. I'll draw some tree shapes in here. And they're reducing in scale. And then I've drawn some shrubs here, which are also following this convergence line here. And then I'm going to just do some rubbing out because I know there's about 10,000 lines on the page and people are probably thinking, what on earth is going on? So I'm going to try and rub out my convergence lines and just leave some of the sketchy elements of the landscape.
So Caitlin,
Yes.
Is the objective of the landscape to make it look like a landscape, or it can be I've got no words. Surreal. It can be. It doesn't need to represent a landscape, or are you
Look,
looking
up
for
to
a
you.
landscape?
What I'm trying to do is show perspective, and then I'm going to add in aerial perspective. So I'm trying to demonstrate kind of what we did in the lesson, what we learned in the lesson in a practical example.
Yep.
But you can take it in your own way, my dear.
But when we do our examples of the picture that you've given
On
us,
the mosaics.
yeah. Are you
Oh,
looking for it to look more like a landscape, or are you looking to, can it be abstract, or does
it
it
can
need
be
to?
it can be abstract. It can, if you wanted
Okay.
to. Yes, because yours are already kind of.
I'd like it to be.
Okay. So there we go. I've drawn in something that looks like a landscape. I've got a river.
That's a Gary Drossel River.
There's a river. And I've got some shrubs, some trees, 3 ridges or 3 mountains, and a sky. And it's all converging to this point. Okay, so now I'm going to apply some color, and I'm just using pencils, watercolor pencils. Okay, so I'm going to pull out my palette first, like we did last time. I'm going to pull out firstly some greens for the trees. They don't have to be green, but in my case there will be. So I've got a deep green. I'm just going to check the color because it's always often you don't get the color you think when you pick it up. There's this one which I think is far too horrendous. This one looks better. Olive green. I've got a more leafy green. Probably a little bit of this high chroma green might be good. This one is probably off the chart green. Maybe don't like that one. And then I've got some browny colors, some ochres. Same to me exactly. Deeper brown. And looking at a bit of a grey for my background. This is a mid grey. I guess I could use light pressure to make it a light grey. Could also add in some blue, looking at what blue this is, like a bluey black. It's more of a, yeah, I don't like that. Okay. So what I'm going to do is try my best to apply some color here. I'm going to work from the background to the foreground instead of from the foreground to the background, just because I'm trying to prove a point. Background, I'm going to use a gray here. As it goes into the hill, I'll put a bit more. It's a blue gray in there. The next one coming forward is this one. A bit more definition on this one. And maybe some hue as well. Then I might go onto this one over here. And I might go to one here is starting to come forward again. So this one is going to be even darker. And I'll be a bit more color. Again, I'm making up the color. I don't really know if it's okay. Then I'm going to think about the trees. I'm going to start at the back with a fairly light, almost not there tree. I'll just put that same color on as I come forward, and then I'll make it stronger. And I'm just putting some definition on that. I'm just using very, very sketchy marks. As you can see, it's not really very clear. As I come forward, I'm making more contrast between the trees. Start to add in some deeper color, hue, chroma. I'm always kind of painting with the pencil in a way. I'm not drawing it incredibly detailed. Might add in a bit of really high chroma in the front. A bit less there. Maybe some grass. As the grass fades away, it gets less green. As it comes forward, it gets more green. This side too. Jackie McCook can't come today because she was away for holidays, but she did a beautiful watercolor of the rice paddies. And Andrina's also doing the rice paddies, and she's done some really interesting collage as well. Some simplification of the rice paddies. And Galia, whose work I showed you, has also did the rice paddies, and she is actually still finishing hers from like 3 years ago. So she's actually working on the background for her rice paddies specifically so I can show Andrina and Jackie. So I'll get her to finish that as soon as possible. So now this side, this is a different type of bush, just scribbling here. So I'm just applying those principles, high chroma, high contrast in the foreground. Now, this river problem, so I might do, what are we doing? Where's the light source? Actually, I haven't even thought about where the light source is. That's a bit of a problem. Maybe it's this way. Yeah, okay. So I'm using a shadow here. Check some shadows on that side of the tree. And also maybe on this bank then, there might be some deeper. Then I might throw in some lighter, so say, I'm hesitant to say blue water, but I'll chuck in a bit of blue. Since it's the day of blue. And then I'll go mainly to grey. And really strong high contrast areas through here. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is chuck some water on it, and it could all go terribly wrong. I haven't put anything on the sky, have I? Oh no. Well. Wash in the sky, and then a little bit of wash through these back mountains.
Okay, and do you think you'll ever be doing a watercolor class?
Oh, I can't do watercolor, Tony.
Yes, you can. Look, you're doing it right now.
Then this is not how you do watercolor. This is look, I did do a watercolor class, but I mean I do know quite a bit about it, but I'm not by any means professional.
No, but your classes shed light. Like, I mean, you're able to speak in such a way and show and demonstrate in such a way that it makes sense to me in particular, but
well, I'm pleased about that, Tony. I'll think about the art a bit more. As I used to, that's my main training, of course, was art. Okay, so I'm just touching in some information on these trees, and as the water goes on, you know, again, you lose clarity. You can go back in with more pencil after that, but sometimes it's good to just get the water on there, and it does bring some of the colors to life a bit more. Of course, with water, it does wet on wet is not always a great way to go, because the things just can really run together, which of course in watercolor you work in a very slow and methodical way. Wet on wet for washes, and then wet on dry. Okay. So it's not by any means a masterpiece, but what I think this demonstrates is there's a couple of things I've done. I've used 1 point perspective, and I've placed things in the landscape according to the vanishing point, the horizon line, and the lines of convergence. So that was the river, the trees, etc. And the river moves around the hill to the vanishing point. I've laid in an environment that then has color applied. The chroma is lower in the background field. The value is higher in the background field. The clarity is less in the background field. As we move forward in space, the chroma increases, the contrast increases, and the detail, not that I've put much detail, but the detail increases. So that's just a 10-minute example of how that can work. We created it from no particular reference, but just applying the principles of linear perspective and aerial perspective. Within about 10 minutes, we can get something that looks like something because of applying those principles of depth and color. Okay. All right, I'll stop the share. It's been really nice spending my Good Friday morning with you. For those of you who it's not Good Friday yet, have a lovely Easter, whatever way you choose to celebrate or not celebrate. And I will hopefully will fix my website problems soon, and everything will be available to you, and you can have a whole Easter long weekend of catching up on whatever else you're doing, but also maybe watching some of the videos, get a chance. So your homework is to make a good start on this landscape. And I suggest you go from the front backwards. So you start what is clear, like, so what the trees in the very front, for example, Chris, if you're doing, and Carol, you're doing the one with the trees that I gave you, the big strong front things, start with them, work back, work back, work back, work back, because then you can take out stuff that's drop off stuff that's not relevant.
Yeah.
Tani's already on landscape number 3. So I put some comments on the Google Classroom for you around the color.
Thank you.
Joe, Chris, Lee, Mary Lou, Jackie, who's not here, Andrina, who's not here. We've got others who are not here. Paul's not here. Sue's not here. Elaine's gone off. Nancy, Michelina, everybody, Carol. Thank you so much. I will see you in 2 weeks. And oh, look. Yes. Anyone else want to hold theirs up, please? Anyone? Carol?
Holding up what? Oh,
Rory, did you join?
No. I've only got to pencil stage. I haven't got to color stage.
How about you, Chris? Did you do it?
I did the same. I started it and only got to pencil. I really like watercolor pencils, which, for the record, are completely different to watercolor, which I hate. And I would want to do it like nicely if I was going to complete it. So no, I haven't. Short answer.
Yep. Okay. Okay, everyone who's here and who's not here, thank you so much, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Enjoy your
Thank you.
Enjoy your hot cross buns. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.